Now that we're familiar with primitive data types in JavaScript, we want to learn how we can operate on them. And we're going to break up operations on these data types into three distinct sections. In this first section, we're going to talk about arithmetic operations. So we're going to be dealing with number variables. And I'm going to go ahead and declare three variables and assign a number to two of them. I'm going to declare variables A, B, and C, which I can do in a single statement by using these comma-separated variable names. And then I'm going to assign the value 2 to the variable A and the value 1 to the variable B. Now, the first arithmetic operation that we want to be able to do, of course, is addition. In this case, we see addition is simple enough by simply using the plus sign, the plus operator. And here I've gone ahead and assigned the value of A plus B to the variable C. So I declared C up here, and now I'm making that assignment. But we'll notice in our console log statement that we do some funky stuff with our string printout. And what we do here is what's called string concatenation. When I have a string and I add values to it, what JavaScript does under the hood is concatenate those values regardless of whether they're an int, a boolean, or a string already. It concatenates it, meaning it just appends it to the end of that string. So here I start with an empty string. I concatenate the value of A, so in this case the number 2, I concatenate that to the end of this empty string, so now my string just contains the string character 2. And then I concatenate more stuff to my string, and then I concatenate my value B, my variable B, and that is the number 1, but it gets converted into a string and simply appended to the end of the existing string that I have, and so on and so forth. So that's the extent that we're going to cover string concatenation, but I would encourage you to go ahead and play around with it a bit yourself until you feel comfortable with how it works and understanding how to do it. And also understanding that if we want to perform addition within a string concatenation, then we need to add a parenthesis set around that addition. So suppose I wanted to do A plus B within my string concatenation. What's going to happen is that the order of operations is going to execute these parentheses first. We may remember order of operations from math in PEMDAS, and there's similar operations and rules in computer programming, including in JavaScript. So whatever's in these parentheses is going to get executed first, and then that'll be concatenated to our string. But for now, I'll just leave it as the variable A. Okay, moving on, we also want to be able to do subtraction. And subtraction is just as simple. Rather than using the plus operator, we use the minus operator. We want to be able to do multiplication, and we use the star operator for that. We want to be able to do division. We use the / operator for that. We want to be able to do modulo arithmetic, and we use the percent sign for that. Now, modulo arithmetic, if you're not familiar with it, it's very much related to division, but rather than getting the answer of the division, we want to get the remainder. So in this case, we have 2 divided by 1, which is equal to 2. It's equal to a nice whole round number without any remainder, so the remainder is 0. In this case, A mod B would return a value of 0 because the remainder is 0, and we assign that value to our variable C. But suppose instead we had A was assigned the value 3 and B was assigned the value 2, then 3 mod 2 would return what? Well, it would return the remainder of 3 divided by 2, and the remainder of 3 divided by 2 is 1 because 2 goes into 3 once with a remainder of 1. So that's how modulo arithmetic works. And feel free to play around with some examples and some sample problems on your own if you feel like that's a little bit confusing. Now, moving on, we want to be able to do 2 more things. We want to be able to increment and decrement our variables by 1, because this is a very common function or a common operation to do in programming. So we can increment variables by just simply doing the variable name plus plus. Of course, the variable has to be a number, otherwise this won't work and it'll spit out an error. But assuming the variable is a number, which in this case it is, we can just increment that number by 1. And similarly, we can decrement that number by 1. So we increment by adding a little plus plus to the end, and what this does is says, okay, take this variable, add 1 to it, and then take that new value and assign it back to the variable. And so we can do plus plus for increment and minus minus for decrement. Now, we've covered a lot here and we're printing out a lot to the console. So let's go ahead and move to our browser to see how exactly all this prints to our console. And we can see it prints exactly what we might expect. Our addition yielded a result of 3, subtraction 1, multiplication 2, division 2, and modulo arithmetic 0. And then we did our increment, which increased the value of our variable a from 2 to 3, and then we decremented it back down to 2. So those are common arithmetic operations that we're going to want to be able to do on numbers. And in the next section, we'll talk about assignment operations.